it's on Netflix. There was like one season that was like one of those 20-minute like webisode type shows.
Yeah.
It was like ABC trying to be edgy, but it's like goofy enough. It's like a night at a bar, and you see how like all the different dynamics are running from people.
Oh,
So
cool.
they keep like moving as each person can like their backgrounds, they go through flashbacks, and then they do this very how it is
Yeah.
it's actually pretty cool.
Are they different characters every time?
No, it's the same cast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all one night.
That's nice.
You go through it.
Okay, I'll send you guys another link. This one hopefully works. It should be a Hangout live. Oh, it's just a YouTube video? Wait, but if you click play, does it?
I see.
Okay, it starts streaming. Good. Oh, you can watch it from the beginning. Interesting. Okay.
You can?
Well, are you able to get it live?
You can it's live, but you can go back to. It's always recording you?
Yeah. Oh, it's recording from when I hit like start broadcasting, I guess. Okay, so
Wait, I see you.
yeah.
So what are we doing now?
Can
I'm gonna watch.
you see me right now?
Yes.
It should be a Hangout.
There we go.
So it's like, is it
I'm a
delayed?
little delayed. It's not live.
All right.
Very live.
All right. Let's just do this.
Oh, it's on live, dude.
Yeah, it's not live. Let me just angle it this way. I think it's the response.
Yeah.
And then let's walk you through it. And then at least it'll be.
No, it's being recorded too.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Look at that.
Is this fun?
You can pick it.
All right.
Wow.
So monkey's doing.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. I'll screen share. Screen share.
Whoa.
That is that. Cool. Okay. So we're gonna do the three kind of big ones. Some of the smaller services like analytics are pretty self-explanatory. The big ones we use are DigitalOcean for hosting, Firebase for the database, and then GitHub for the code. And there's also some other information that I put there.
Okay.
So on DigitalOcean, we were running this on a 2 gigabyte droplet, single core droplet out of SFO. And this is where when we load tested it, we were able to get. Yeah. But, when we load tested this.
Okay. So this is DigitalOcean.
Yep, DigitalOcean.
And this is our fossil.
Nope, this is our server. So this is the server that does all the post-processing of the connections.
Okay.
And let's see, we were on.
And we'll move the account to the email I get to you.
Right. Yeah. What I'm going to do is like transfer a snapshot to you, and that's sort of their instance of the server has come up again under the map that you guys are.
And then the URLs. How we get the URLs?
The URLs are actually not important, which is really nice because it interacts with Firebase, kind of in, based on Firebase URLs.
Oh.
So, or no, I'm sorry, I'm mixing projects.
Is it going to mountain map, right?
Yeah. So the URLs are going to be important. So we'll have to get the
let's
domain
choose
transferred over to Salute also. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, this is on a 2 gigabyte server or instance, and it was able to handle like 14,500 data points per minute, which is what we load tested on.
Yeah.
You can resize pretty easily just by shutting it down and starting it up again. There are a bunch of different droplets here.
And then if you want to do like analytics and reporting and stuff, this is the place you can do it, or you grab
No,
it?
New Relic is the place to do that. We'll get that account transferred over for you guys too. Yeah, that'll show like your
That's all
current.
the data.
Right, it'll show like your current load on the server.
Yeah.
We'll be using Flurry for analytics, so for actual like user interactions, it'll be over there.
Is that already using for that?
Flurry?
So there's no concrete analytics that heard that we should integrate. So what I've decided to do is after this, like after we have a firm idea of what we actually want to measure, what questions you want to solve.
We're talking about just doing everything, just like grabbing all of the user interactions.
Yeah, just pop it
That's
into
the starting point. Okay,
Absolutely everything.
Pop it through, yeah.
cool. Let's see. There's a note in the GitHub about scaling this thing past a single core server. So right now it's not built to take advantage of multiple CPUs.
Yeah.
But you can still get a lot of advantages by just scaling up the memory here from 4 to 8 to 16.
That's cool. You just click around and it does that.
It's cool, yeah. This is one of the best design. It's so cheap too. Anyways, all right. So the way that you manage these things, the only actions you should ever need to take every once in a while, if you're going to do a big migration or something like that, shut it down first, take a snapshot, and then you'll just see a list of snapshots.
And what is it running?
Somewhere else.
When you say snapshot?
Ubuntu. So yeah, so it'll just like
Oh, it's just like
dump
another
the entire
version of
OS.
AWS, but just
Exactly. It's really similar to AWS. And it doesn't have the whole ecosystem of products, but for the most part, you don't need it.
Sweet.
Let's see, what else? Okay, let's look at some logs, maybe. This might be a little more in-depth than you guys need to go, but you'll be able to SSH. So when I create this thing, I'll give you a private key, and you can set that up on any computer, and you'll be able to SSH into it.
Yep.
And I think we just have MATLAB.io. We're using Doku, which is like a Heroku clone built on top of Docker, which is kind of nice.
On top of what?
Docker?
Okay.
Yeah, Docker is kind of a container engine. It means that you can snapshot like any Linux operating system and port it over to any other server and run it there. It's kind of like an interoperability hack. So to get logs, it's Docker logs -t to stream them, and then the app. So if you want to see what apps are running, you can do a Docker PS.
Yep.
That'll show you just the names of all the apps that are currently running.
Yep.
And then if you want to get some logs, you can do Docker logs -t, and then the name of the app, which is transponder. So this is Docker, and this is Docker. Those are different. That's important. And then you can just do that, but you can, if you want them to look a little bit nicer, you can pipe into something called Bunyan, which pays attention to Docker logs, and then the app name, and -t. Okay. And Bunyan, the logs come out in like a JSON thing, which is cool because down the road you can send them out to a server, like a web service or something like that. And this is basically the app, what's happening. So if you have any errors, they'll happen here. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do with Bunyan to filter out errors from other stuff.
Cool.
But New Relic should also report those, I think. I haven't actually tested that, but
Okay.
yeah. So you'll see those coming through.
Right now we're SSH into the DigitalOcean box.
Right, we're on the DigitalOcean box and we're just looking at the logs that are streaming out of the sky. So
straightforward.
most of this stuff is pretty mundane. It's just like, obviously, not a lot of time has passed, so it's not doing connections or anything like that.
Yep.
I think the only other thing you would have to do on DigitalOcean is resize it, and you have to make sure to shut it down first to do that. Yeah, pretty straightforward.
Cool.
So that's DigitalOcean.
Now, how often do the boxes have to be cycled?
Um,
Because I guess like on Amazon, every now and then they'll have to do like a hardware update and they'll actually shut down your box.
oh yeah, no, you don't have to do that.
Oh.
Here, as far as I know, they don't.
Oh, sweet.
They don't shut you down. I think if you're, you can run a bunch of different flavors of Linux. Like when you create a droplet, you tell it you can do Ubuntu, Fedora, Debian, CentOS, like anything. We actually started with a what was it? Applications.
Yeah.
We started with a Doku droplet, which is right here.
Yeah.
So if you want to keep running Ubuntu 14.04 forever, like they'll let you do that. It's totally fine.
Cool.
So you might have to update this periodically, and it's nice to do that. But because all of our code lives in a GitHub repo, it's really easy to do that. So actually, maybe let's do Firebase first. It's lovely too. Okay, so that's where the server lives that accepts HTTP requests from the app to do like sign in and auth, and basically just that. We built our own auth provider. And then it also watches for changes to the Firebase and recomputes connections based on those changes and then stores them back in Firebase. So it kind of just sits above the app, which the core of the app is really just Firebase and the iOS app, and it watches for changes and recomputes things kind of when it needs to. So the Firebase, there are two of them right now. It's Transponder and
Firebase.
Mhm.
Transfer was the one.
Transponder is one of them. I think we're actually going to change the name when we transfer them over to just be Salute and Salute Dev. There's kind of some legacy naming stuff going on here. But yeah, basically you've got a dev instance running on the server and a production instance. And the naming convention we use, just production's the raw name, salute, and we append dev to the Firebase and the server.
Yep.
It'll handle the dev stuff. And the app is configured so that if you run it from a MacBook or I believe TestFlight, Ethan, as well.
I'm not sure. I think TestFlight might be.
We'll double check on TestFlight.
Yeah.
It should run using the development environment, and if you run it from, oh no, I'm sorry, that one is production. Yeah, so run it from a MacBook for dev environment or TestFlight or the App Store for production environment.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay. So Firebase has, the limit you're going to want to keep an eye on with Firebase is the concurrent connections. With an app like Salute, that's the thing that I would guess would run out first. That was our cap that we hit with Shortwave.
Yeah.
On this plan, like our peak concurrent users last 24 hours here have been like 3. But I think if we look at, well, actually Shortwave's out of date. You get, I believe it's like 200 on this plan.
Oh, interesting. So every app actually opens up its own Firebase connection. You get,
Right.
There's no
It's actually a socket connection.
Is there a concept of pooling it all on Firebase then?
It'll pool a bunch of references from the same app. So you won't have separate connections for different locations in the database, but it's like one app, one connection.
Got it.
Yeah, and then I'm not sure how long they tail the concurrency onto that, but they say on the web that you can equate a concurrent connection per month to like 1440 users. And we saw one to, I believe, 150 or so with a messaging app.
150
So-
concurrent.
So you take the number of concurrents and you multiply by 150, and that's how many max users you can support like that month.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, but it really depends on your engagement.
Yep.
But anyways, free tier, you get 50
And then
connections.
from your personal experience, you like using Firebase as opposed to, because what we've done in the past is we'll just push it, well, I guess this makes more sense for messaging and real-time data, because what you used to do in the past is you should just basically dump it into a JSON flat file and pop it into like another processing engine.
Right.
So you pop it into like S3, right, and then we run bash scripts to just process all those logs, and then those logs give you an answer.
Yeah.
But I guess this is another way of doing that.
Yeah, you
It's
could also
more
use something like Mongo and just have another
Yeah,
server that
yeah.
listens through Redis or something
Yeah, yeah.
like that. The thing about Firebase is that like
It's all managed for you and stuff.
well, and I like to think that I would build Firebase. So you could do something with MongoDB where on your inputs and outputs you have listeners and use Redis as a message key to like send it to other server instances.
Yeah.
And you could probably spend a few months building that, and you'd
Yeah.
end up with effectively what Firebase is. So
Sure.
I think the plan, like for everything that we build, is always to migrate off of Firebase at some point.
Yeah.
But once we do that, we'll have a very similar structure.
To Firebase.
Yeah,
Got it.
exactly.
Okay,
So,
that's fair.
so anyways, you can handle 50 max connections right away. If you guys are going to be doing events where you think you might get even close to that limit, it's a good idea just to jump up to the $50 a month plan, because this one will cut you off hard.
Is this free?
Yeah, it's free right now for 50 concurrents, which is cheap. Awesome.
Hacker plan.
Yeah. But they won't actually give you overages because they don't have any billing information for you. So I would jump up to this one
Yeah.
if you think you might get close, just
Okay.
so that you can actually continue to work. And I think their overages are actually billed at the next tier up base level, so it's like pretty fair.
Yep.
Let's see, what else?
Well, that's all the Firebase stuff, and then walk me through. So everything goes directly to Firebase, and when is the server, the DigitalOcean stuff kind of play in?
Sure, yeah. So
I mean, if you look at data flow, app starts up, it logs in,
Yep.
checks Firebase, goes back. Cool.
it actually logs in through the server because we wanted to do a LinkedIn auth.
Yeah.
And Firebase does have some cool built-in auths, but not LinkedIn.
Okay.
So it actually checks with the server to log in.
Mhm.
We report back and say, okay, you're this user, and we authenticate them with Firebase. They're not connected.
Yeah.
And then basically every time somebody gets a ping, they report that to Firebase.
Yep.
And we have a node server that watches for new pings to come in.
Mhm.
They do report it, through the node
The
server.
node server is running on DigitalOcean.
The node server is running on DigitalOcean. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So the
And
ping
it's,
goes.
it's the same Ubuntu machine.
Yeah. Okay. So there's
So
basically
node
one
server is
Ubuntu
checking
machine.
Firebase all the time
Mhm.
for new people, and then when it finally finds a new person, what does it do?
Well, it's so the node server all the time is accepting data packets that contain like sightings. So that's basically so that he can fire and forget those.
Mhm.
So we're concerned that in some situations he's only woken up for 5 seconds when he gets a Bluetooth broadcast. We didn't want him to like have to set up a WebSocket connection and like manage that in that time. So he actually just fires off a request with a post request with a bunch of parameters, and then if it dies, it dies. But as long as the server gets it, it'll process it. It doesn't actually have to report success to him, and it puts that data into Firebase,
Cool.
which
Got it.
goes here.
So the DigitalOcean boxes are just related for authentication.
They're for authentication and they're for paying attention. So once that data comes into Firebase, then we have a node server that is basically doing this all the time. So
So how many node servers are running on the box?
there's 2. There's one for production and one for dev.
Okay.
Right now, authentication and connection
yeah.
computation and data reporting are all happening on the same node server.
Connection was the other thing, so authentication, connection,
Yeah, so authentication, sightings. So I saw another user,
settings.
and connection, like computation. So paying attention to the fact that a new setting happened, and then recomputing all the connections like
Got
as
it.
appropriate. So right now those are all running on the same server, but in a minute we'll go through the GitHub code, and you'll see like they're pretty modular. So you could break those out into their own servers pretty easily. They're all pretty self-contained. So I think that's anything else on Firebase?
No, those were all my questions.
Okay. Let's jump over to GitHub. So we've got. Let's just go to my repo. Let's run my repos here. Let's get yours first. Okay. So the GitHub repo is pretty bare bones. You can clone this. The only thing you'll have to do to get it up and running is do a pod install. Ethan, what's your folder you're working out of Blast? Salute? Just straight up salute.
On GitHub?
Or Global Broadcaster SDK?
Uh,
That's your root folder nowadays.
Salute.
Okay, just salute. Cool. Sweet. Sure. So this is the source for the entire app.
Yep.
The only thing that you might have to do is run a pod install. But
And then, sorry, Ethan, could you also give us just documentation in terms of, I know you mentioned when we talked about building this, you said there was a series of steps we should just make sure that are working. Because once we get to Git, we'll download the source code, and it's actually compile and build.
Yeah.
We were on the phone, you said that there's a bunch of steps we have to do before it works.
What's the end goal? The end goal is to transfer the source code.
No, that seems easy. It's really more just a build.
if they wanted to pull it down and build
Yeah.
it, is there anything they have to do besides a pod install, or do they even have to do a pod install? Or your source track, or those
pod
under
install.
source control?
I think pod install is probably what I was talking about.
All right,
because
we'll check it out, and then I guess if I have any questions.
There was one. I think at the time Firebase was being very problematic. The library for Firebase. And what I remember we did this like multiple times where it was in the pods, but it said it wasn't. In that case, I just downloaded the library and put it in there the normal way. I'm pretty sure that's what I was talking about.
Which means it's under version control, so actually there's no setup process there.
Right. If
Should be able
it
to
is
start.
under version control, then you should get it.
Yeah.
Right away. We'll see.
All right, and then the other repo, this one's mine, is salute-backend. And actually, yeah.
So to get a repo, which one's the app? What's it called?
The app is just called Salute.
So okay,
Or actually, Ethan, is
your,
it Salute iOS? I was just on it. Can't remember. No, it's just Salute.
Okay, and then yours is on.
Mine is Salute-backend.
Okay.
And so those will both be under.
Yep.
Whatever GitHub account we send them to.
Yep.
Let's see. Actually, yeah. Stay out of this for now. Branches. We work off of, we do just develop a master, which is basic Git flow stuff. Master should always be deployable or buildable like at this moment.
Yep.
Develop is where we kind of break stuff.
Yeah.
And develop uses dev, master uses production. There's a flag on the server. I can actually show you Sage MATLAB. This is really, so we use this cool thing called salute. Salute. So the cool thing about Docker is, you know how like when you deploy to Heroku, you have this little command line thing where you can just name the app and then push it and you're good, basically. Docker takes that a step further, so you actually name the app by just saying my Git remote is named this, so docker@mountainlab.io.
Yeah.
And if we push to this URL, then the app is called transponder dev.
Oh,
Push to this URL, the app is called transponder.
Got it.
So it's really, really nice and easy to use. And
So
there's-
you're basically using that as a build tool and also deploy.
Exactly.
And then what do you guys use for logging?
Right now it's logging, but it's not logging anywhere external. It's only on the server. So there's like a file.
Okay.
Let's see. And then let's do a.
And is there like a unit test that runs as well, just to make sure everything's working correctly? It's been deployed.
No, there are no unit tests right now. It's because we have one person touching each code base.
Yeah.
Docker config. Okay. I'll put this in the wiki because I'm not sure why that's not there. There's a single config variable that exists on the server, and it just has here, server.coffee. Actually, I should be on develop probably. Here we go. Environment. Okay. It literally just has a flag that says either production or development, and that's where it switches the URLs. So the only, and I'll do this for you guys when I spin it up, but just so you know in the future, the only other piece of configuration you need to do when you're spinning up a new instance and deploying this on it is if it's a production instance, like set this variable, because otherwise it'll default to a dev instance. So so that's called a Docu environment variable.
Yeah.
And just so you know how to set it, Docu help, you would do like docu config :set, and the app, which is transponder, and then the key, which is what's it called? Production.
Got it.
Node underscore env. This is what Heroku uses to lineate roles. So that's just how you would, if you were spinning up a new one. That'll already be set, the one you guys have, but good to know. Let's see. What else? This guy's pretty self-contained. I wrote a little bit of a deployment guide down here. This is like from a crush instance, how you would kick that thing out.
Yep.
The only other important thing on here is in the wiki. There is a document on scaling. And you can go through this kind of in more detail if you want. But basically it describes which parts of the app you can directly scale up right now by just like throwing money at it, essentially, and getting bigger droplets involved from DigitalOcean, and which sections you actually need to rewrite some code for. And there are 2 of those, and kind of then like the process for doing each of those, like what approach you want to take. So the long and short of it is that like right now, for the most part, it'll scale up, but you'll stop. You won't get the advantage from multiple CPUs, only more memory. So once you want to start clustering it, you need to handle the Firebase listeners so that you don't have 2 servers trying to act on the node at the same time.
Oh, okay. And how do you change that? You actually create almost like a.
You have to make like a load balancer for Firebase.
Got it.
Yeah. But yeah, so PM2 is the way that I would do that. Node has a cluster module that's native that works too, but this one's a little shinier. A little more. Okay, let's see what else. DigitalOcean, Firebase, and GitHub. Maybe let's just like take a peek at the New Relic real quick.
Did you,
Or did you move to
this way here?
over here?
Very.
Or you just go like 2 blocks out there.
Okay, so this is just the basic New Relic dashboard.
Yep. And this is running on. This is going to be pinging Firebase as well as DigitalOcean. Right?
It's not pinging Firebase, just DigitalOcean. So Firebase is fast. It's supposed to be real time.
Yeah.
So so you shouldn't have any problems there. But if there are any errors that propagate back from that, I think they'll be caught here. They should be caught here, but also in the logs.
Okay. Okay.
Instances is the only other little thing. I don't know if I actually set this up properly. Yeah, it looks like it is running on this guy on our shared server. Because we're using Docu, like I would pay less attention to this instances thing and more attention to what the DigitalOcean dashboard is telling you, because this I think only knows about the container which is done.
Of course.
So.
And then what do you use? Then what's a good metric in New Relic that you use?
As far as like the load on the server,
Yeah.
This guy should actually give you.
It's more just transactions, what you care about.
I think it's transactions. This is too much. Most time consuming. I usually go by response time. So like as you're starting to get towards that like 80%, like 90% memory usage on Node, you start seeing times that spike after like 14, 15 seconds, and that's a good indication that stuff is getting slow. It's like right now, the app's been pretty much sitting at the baseline, just spinning and waiting for the last few days.
Okay.
So, but in the last few minutes, we've been setting it. The average response time is 601 milliseconds with like almost no throughput.
That's
So-
awesome. Okay.
Yeah, so it's okay. It's also on a box that's being shared with a bunch of other apps, so it's not as fast as it could be.
Yep.
This one's faster. Because basically he this is where you send citing data. So he just sends it, and as long as I get a well-formed payload from him, I'm done. So there's nothing in between.
But
So this one-
he sends that payload to Firebase, and you're analyzing it.
No, he sends it to me, I send it to Firebase.
Oh, got it. Oh, so
Yeah.
he's never actually sending directly to Firebase.
Not for the data, not for the citing data. For everything else, he is communicating with Firebase when the app is open,
Mhm.
but for the purpose of like not having to set up a socket connection, he's sending just to me.
Got it.
REST request.
Got it. Okay.
And actually, if he gets an error back, he just caches it. Right? Tries to
Yeah.
So.
So yeah, as the app is gathering data, it stores every contact point until it has a time where I can send it, or if I think I can make it in that time. And if I don't receive a response, I assume it doesn't get sent, and I'll send it later.
Cool.
Yeah, so it added a little bit of complexity because the server's now involved in not just watching but actually relaying data, but it made it like bulletproof, which is good.
Yeah.
Because it's in the background.
Yep.
Cool. Let's see, what else? Flurry, we'll get that up, but there will be data there when we do that. What else did we touch here? Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.
I'm thinking I'll update these before I transfer this repo too.
Yeah, if you can update everything, then just change the passwords, emails, and I'll look at it this weekend.
Cool.
I'm sure I'll have some questions to use it for you.
Sweet. Do you guys have a GitHub account that I can like target this stuff at?
I want to make this a GitHub account,
Okay,
so I'll
cool.
do that first.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna leave this call.
Oh, so you leave it, then it just stays there now?
End
Really?
broadcast. Yeah, should. Let me hang on before I do this. Make sure there's no record button I have to click in.
Oh yeah, it's there. I just don't understand how it